There was a documentary just put out yesterday,
Yep.
a good one, by the way, people should check out, called Flatten the Curve, by a bunch of pilots and military people. You know, that's our term. That's our flat Earth term.
I've been watching this debate. I watched this debate between Austin, which Sit Gets It, and Brian, and these two Globers here, Mr. Sensible, and the conspiracy culture guy, the cats, whatever. So this is an image that this guy, Mr. Sensible, brought to his debate, showing he sent a balloon up 35 kilometers, 34 kilometers up, proving, see this little tiny image here says, well, that's the curvature of Earth, but you can see here when he was releasing the balloon, you already see the curvature of the Earth. So that's not really curvature, it's the kind of lens that he was using. So the point I want to make, like these two, during the debate, that's the first thing that we're going to talk today. They brought up that they used the words from the pilot Wolfie 6020, saying that the airplanes don't have to adjust for curvature because they fly from waypoint to waypoint. But I'm going to explain how these guys have no idea what they're talking about, or they are just being deceitful. Same thing with this other guy here. He also debated Austin, the professor Brian Maers. He also used the same thing, that airplanes don't have to be, the pilots don't have to be constantly adjusting for curvature because airplanes fly from waypoint to waypoint. I mean, I'm going to describe here how these people make no sense at all. Point. Okay, this is the Graf Zeppelin flight, okay, around the world. So it's the same concept, right? So let's say that this is a waypoint, this is another waypoint. So on the flat Earth, pilots or airplanes, they don't have to be constantly adjusting left or right because you fly from destination to destination, from point to point. So I'm going to find today, in a few minutes, the Amelia Earhart, which we can explain much better. But that's the way you do. Let's say this is a waypoint, so the airplane departs from Germany to Tokyo. It flies straight, on level. When it gets to Tokyo, it's going to go to Los Angeles, fly straight on level. And of course, there are the waypoints along the way, picking up, the position of the airplane, but the airplane is flying straight and level. So the waypoints does not really justify the lack of the pilot not having to adjust for curvature, because regardless of the waypoints on the ball Earth, the Earth is a sphere, so it has a curvature. It has to be adjusted. So the waypoints mean nothing, and flying over a ball as far as curvature is concerned. This idea, like they were saying, like, oh, pilots don't have to adjust for curvature because of the waypoints. They fly from waypoints to waypoints. It means nothing, because waypoints to waypoints just means that they fly from one destination to another straight and level, okay, and pick up those signals along the way, that means nothing about curvature. All right, so unfortunately, Witzit gets it, let them uh, go back past with this argument, which is a very poor argument. So let me check here the, okay, finally, this is the flight route of Amelia Earhart over the flat Earth. All right, she left Oakland, Tucson, New Orleans, Miami. So just imagine these are waypoints, okay? So you see an airplane on the flat Earth does not have to be constantly flying and adjusting because we fly from destination to destination. So imagine that those destinations are waypoints. Okay, so on the flat Earth, the pilot does not have to be constantly steering or banking right or left because you fly from destination to destination. And since it's a flat Earth, the waypoints does not mean that the automatic pilot is automatically adjusting for curvature because there's no such thing as curvature. So look at this. This was her flight route. Okay, she flew, she left California, and just see these points, the cities where she stopped. All those were stops. Sometimes she stopped for a day. She spent the night. Sometimes just for a couple of hours. But that's how she flew around the flat Earth. Now, on the ball Earth, the problem with the ball Earth is that she would have to manually adjust for curvature. Imagine, when was it? 1930s, 20s? I think it was 1920s, 30s when she took this flight. There was not a lot of automatic. There was no laser gyros or anything like that. So of course she was flying over a flat plane. She couldn't be adjusting for curvature every few miles. So, but today's, if imagine these are waypoints, it's just pick up the signals of the airplane that it's going that way, giving the airplane's position. But it has nothing to do with curvature. All right, this idea. So first, Wolf 6020 said that airplanes don't need to be adjusting constantly because of waypoints. It makes no sense. And then Mr. Sensible and the Cats guy used this argument debating with it, gets it, Austin. And right there, I wish Austin, could see this because waypoints do not adjust for curvature. It just shows the position of the plane. And the pilot flies straight and level from point to point, from destination to destination. So on the flat Earth, you don't have to be constantly adjusting right to left. But on the ball Earth, you would have to constantly be adjusting for the curvature because in the ball Earth, you have to adjust for curvature. There's no other way. Whether it's 1 mile, 10 miles, 100 miles, 1,000 miles, you have to be adjusted for curvature constantly. So waypoints has nothing to do with curvature of the Earth, right? Even if you fly from point to point, let's say that you're flying from Karachi in Pakistan to Calcutta in India, you still would have to adjust for curvature. Waypoints mean nothing there. All right. So this argument by Professor Myers, Brent Myers, whatever was his name, and the two guys there, the Mr. Sensible and the other guy, Katz, whatever. It's a poor argument, and so it has nothing to do with the so-called curvature of the Earth. Okay. So even the PhD thesis, there's only allowed within the field of academic. Yeah, all this, I was listening to. I heard the debate, and Brett Myers, Brian Myers, whatever his name is, he keeps saying, "Well, is this a peer review paper, whatever?" You got to understand, this is a mafia, right? That is a mafia. So if you're not part of the mafia, you're not allowed to bring your ideas or your subjects. Okay, let's say I also watched I like Sanjanis, even though he's still a Ball but he defends the Bible and he has some good points on geocentrism. All right, That's it. And who knows? Maybe one day he shows up here. I would invite him to come here, so I can ask him questions as well. All right. But this is like a club, okay? George Carlin, he said there's a big club. You're not allowed to be in there. So all these peer review, all these guys, the academia, it's like a mafia. If you don't think like them, if you don't agree with their position, you're not going to be allowed in the club. All right. And I went to college in Alabama, in USA. So back in Alabama, I learned this history while I was there. And I love Alabama. I do love Alabama. Um, but at that time, I think in the 50s or something, there was like some golf clubs where only white people were allowed, not black people were not allowed in the golf club. So you see this academia, this peer review papers, whatever, these peer guys, is like that. It's like a club. If you don't think like that, if you don't promote the heliocentric model, you're just not going to be allowed. So Dr. Sanjanis was explaining that some of his students tried to submit papers to university on geocentrism, and they just don't accept that paper. You know, that's their policy, so they don't give a chance. All right, so this is like being in North Korea, live in North Korea, and try to establish a democratic party. This system will not allow. So the system, the heliocentric system, which to me, and I will talk about here, it's nothing more than a political system, is in power. And once they are in power, they don't allow the competition. All right, that's why they play dirty tricks, and they play dirty tricks. They play dirty tricks on our platforms. All right, you cannot Google this because you're not going to get the result. I was watching a video the other day, and right away it was in the autoplay mode. So the next video, it was one of the professor, not Professor Dave. And I was like, well, like I was on autoplay watching this flat earth video and immediately start playing this anti-flat earth video. They have all the systems set up in their favor. Right? There's no fairness. The game is rigged, in their favor. This is a quote from a newspaper published in the 1800s. In the 1800s, more specifically in 1872, they were trying to establish heliocentric model in China. Okay, so the Chinese astronomers, they published this in the Times of London in 1872. We have better philosophers and men of higher intelligence than any of you have ever been able to produce. You tell us that the earth goes around the sun, when we know by our sense that it does not. If you want to use your eyes and believe what you see, you must be deaf to all teaching and instruction, and we will have nothing to do with you. So, Japan did it pretty much. Japan was even more extreme than that, because when the Jesuits were here and they tried to establish the heliocentric model, they were always expelled from Japan. They kicked their butts out of Japan. Get the heck out of here. Go back to Europe, go back to the Vatican, and because they were trying to establish their political system disguised as a cosmology here in Japan. So the Chinese did the same thing. They didn't want any part, and that was in 1872. Right? They wanted no part with heliocentric model, but because it's a political system, and they played, dirty tricks, and you can imagine the heliocentric model is just like uh, dirty politics. How you do, behind the curtains or under the table deals or whatever to get it established. All right. So they led China to war. There was the Opium War, and they divided China. They did pretty much. And finally, in 1903, there was no other option for them. They had to accept the heliocentric model. Same thing in Japan. I mentioned this on my think a couple of days ago I mentioned. Oh yeah. So if you watch the heliosorcery, we're gonna go there and I'm gonna read that. The heliosorcery documentary. It says, "Thank you, Eddie. Enjoyed this video very much. By the way, the Shinto Shikusetsu will be held on December 90th. This event celebrates the birthday of the Japanese Empress. Before the war, the big war, Second World War, was the most important Shinto national holiday. The kanji is worth noting as that's the kanji, the Erchi, means earth, and Q means eternal. During the Black Ship occupation, that's when the Freemason Commodore Perry came over, bombed two cities, and forced Japan. Here in Japan is known as the rape of Japan. Okay, they were forced, just like raping a woman, open her legs, and that's what they did. During the Black Ship occupation in the Meiji period, Japan formally changed the kanji to where Q means ball. So they were forced to have the word ball there. When means earth. Japan was forced to remove the Shikusetsu holiday from the calendar by the Jesuit scholars who controlled the Allied occupation after the war. I believe the war was fought over this simple little kanji, which has so great an importance. Shinto remains in defiance of the Jesuit order by retaining the kanji, which means flat earth. All right. So we don't, people here, it's clear, we don't want your political system, your heliocentric model here. Get this back to Europe, you know. But, just like it's a political system, they force wars, they bomb the heck out of nations. So you can imagine this occupation. And I have here a map. All these guys that I'm presenting for you today, I talked about in the past, okay? So this is here, you see the Jesuit symbol here from Rome, is spreading all over the world. So if you go and see that flat earth, there's like a picture of a whole bunch of flat earth like all over Australia and New Zealand because they all had their own flat earth models, which it was a physical flat earth with a dome on top. Right? South America, here in North America, right? Canada. And what did they do? Wherever they went, they brought their ball and took their land. Okay, they left the ball there. Okay, oh, you keep looking at the stars, whatever, and took their land. All right, that's nothing but a political system to submit the whole world into Rome's dominion. That's just what it is. It's nothing more. There's no science in heliocentric model. So that's why when I see these guys debating, I say, well, this is a very important movie. Heliosorcery is a very important movie because it takes you back to the beginning, how this whole thing started. All right, it's nothing but a way to dominate, to conquer lands, and subjugate people to the power of Europe, the power of London. All right. So let's move on. Let's talk more about flights since this is all about flights. I don't want to get too much on the Ballworth and the helio sorcery stuff today. So the next one that I will be talking about, globers are funny, Globers are really funny. So they talk about inertia, how you're inside an airplane, inside a car, you throw a ball up, and they had this. I've seen a couple of videos how they use that. Okay, there's tractors. If you think about tractors, the farmers, those tractors that work on farm, they're very slow. Okay, they probably reach what 10 miles per hour, right? If speeding, but normally they're very slow. So they have this video where there are two tractors, and in between there's like an elastic bed, and the guy jumping. Okay, so the tractors are going really, really, really slow while the guy is jumping, and they want to prove inertia with that. Okay, at the same time they say that Earth is spinning around the sun at 66,000 miles per hour, 66.6 thousand miles per hour. Okay, 666. So this is a flight. It's Aloha Flight 243. It happened a couple of years ago. So this flight, they were flying, and the top of the plane it blew off. It just blew off. It was an old plane, a 727, I believe. There were cracks already, and they were still flying with that plane. So what happened? Mid-flight, the top of the plane blew off. The depressurization sent a whole bunch of people flying, including flight attendants. Some of the bodies were never recovered because they were flying over the ocean, over the Pacific Ocean, right? And there was no communication between the pilot and the rest of the plane because all the electronics connected, the speakers, whatever, was on the top of the plane and got ripped apart when the airplane exploded. Now, can you imagine this plane flying at, let's say, 500 miles per hour, 400 miles per hour ground speed with no top? So there were many people who were just, dragged out of the plane because of the wind. All right. So the ones who survived is because they were all strapped with their seatbelts on. Everything they had just flew away because of the wind. So why don't they use an example like this when trying to explain inertia? You see how not just the silly, it's embarrassing for the physics professor, okay? A physics professor, or those guys, Mr. Sensible, whoever is the other pilots, like Wolf 6020 and the others, Ballard pilots. They try to explain inertia with examples where they are inside an airplane with the whole structure, fuselage, steel all over. I take the bullet train here in Japan, and it's amazing. You don't even feel the water moving, how smooth that thing is. But if they remove the whole fuselage, I mean, all our papers, everything would flow away. Okay, so why don't they use an example that's real? Like, for example, I have my window open here. If I go outside, I have a picnic in the park, looking at the skies, which is being sprayed right now. You know, we're not moving. You're not spinning. This is not inertia. This is that means that the Earth is stationary. All right. So these guys constantly bring some examples that's totally out of reality to explain what we perceive as reality. All right. So this is flight Aloha Airlines flight 243, and the top of the airplane blew off. Now there is another one very similar, which was a TWA, where the cargo compartment didn't close well, and mid-flight it ripped off, and a whole bunch of the parts of the fuselage, also dragging people out because of the depressurization. But whoever remained there had to be properly tied down to the chair because they couldn't even walk. So if those guys, the physics professor debating there, use examples that correspond to reality. Okay, don't bring those silly examples because normally you can convince people who don't know much better. All right, and that's most of those guys are like Agent Smith. They're just there to prevent people from opening their minds. So they give those silly examples. Not Professor Dave, also he used that inside the train, people throwing a ball. You got to use something like this. Tell one of these guys to throw anything up and see if it falls back to their hands, okay? And let me show here a video. All right, so look at this guy. He's riding what, 60, 70 miles per hour. He can't hardly talk, okay? Look at his mouth, all right? He can't even close his mouth. All right, he's driving a Jeep, and the windshield, he took it down. Look at 70 miles, 112 kilometers. Look at 70 miles, 80 miles. Tell him to throw anything a ball up, at this moment. Why? This is only 70 miles, guys, and you're telling me Earth is going 67,000 miles per hour. You don't feel for because of inertia. I mean, have some shame, Professor whatever, Brian Myers or Professor Dave, pilot. Have some shame in your face. I mean, how can you use those examples? All right, you should be embarrassed. That's why I would love to be back in class in college as I was listening all that stuff, and I couldn't ask any questions, you know. So that's why I'm going to invite those physics professor here if they want to come, because I want to ask them questions, the questions that I couldn't ask when I was in college. Okay, and I want to ask them questions. All right, look at this guy. He can't hardly close his mouth at 80 miles per hour, and you want to us to believe that we are speeding at 66,600 miles per hour around the sun. You know, I mean, have some shame, guys. You know, I mean, I don't know. Okay, this is embarrassing. I think if I don't know. And I understand money talks. Okay, money talks. And some of those professors, like that guy, Krauss, whatever his name is, Krauss, he was teaching at the University of Arizona. And his salary there was $160,000 a year, you know, about $10,000 a month. And I mean, of course they're gonna lie because they don't want to lose their jobs. So they're gonna keep lying to people and bringing those silly examples and make fun of flat earthers. But you know, please, guys, open your eyes. I know that I'm talking mostly with flat earthers right now, but you know, I mean, please, please have some. All right. Uh, I do want to talk about this, may perhaps in future live streams. Okay, those wolves in sheep clothing, Christians supposedly who were supposed to be defending the Bible, which is a flat Earth book, but instead they are on the other side. They are defending the heliocentric political system, which is not really a cosmology system, it's just a political system. But some other time we're going to be talking about. I'm just giving you some hints of what to expect in uh, the coming live streams. Change this. Yeah, I want to make this like a weekly, right? Weekly live stream, so we can bring some guests. All right, so you see there on the screen, this is actual data. In 2019, all the data from January, see here, it says August. It's because it's plain. Let me go back to the beginning. All right, January, and then February. So all the data from NOAA, North Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, and also from the Japanese Weather Department or something like that, the Chinese Meteorological Service, it was all put together. And then you can see here, Riley, these are the cyclone here, and you, typhoon, whatever. And you see another one here, another one, because this is all real data put together of the whole year 2019. What did this guy do? He's from the Philippines. He put it all into a projection, a flat Earth map. All right here, you see the speed of the winds right here. Okay, these are the jet streams out there on the other side along the Antarctic ring. Right, you see how fast it is. You know, it gets to speed up to 250 miles per hour, perhaps even more than that. But this is real data. So see this line here is the Greenwich line, the time zones, right? So imagine an airplane coming, let's say from here, crossing, flying right along this line right here. Okay, let's say the airplane is flying from one side to another. You have to understand, like, the airplane has to adjust, the automatic pilot will be adjusting because the airplane has to maintain its course, you know, its path, right? So the winds will blow. If you're trying to fly, but the wind is blowing to this direction, the automatic pilot will make corrections. When it gets to this part here, where the winds are blowing from east to west, the same thing, you know, we'll have to correct to the other side, all right? So as the airplane is flying from, let's say, from Australia to North America here, it's going to have to adjust from winds from west to east, and then again from east to west, from west to east, from east to west. So it's a constant adjustment as the airplane is flying through the atmosphere. So the corrections made by the autopilot, it has nothing to do with curvature of the Earth. It has nothing to do. It's just adjusting for the corrections that the airplane eventually will suffer some problems going flying straight on an atmosphere that is so active. It's very active. The atmosphere is extremely active. So the same way, the airplane, the autopilot will make those corrections from winds coming from the easterly or westerly. Okay, the same thing. There are winds going from up and down. Yes, we do, and I'm gonna show you guys here. So this today episode's all about that. So we have descending air, okay, ascending air. So imagine the airplane is not only correcting for winds coming from the west or from the east, it's also correcting, constantly correcting, because as the airplane is flying, winds are pushing the airplane up or down. Okay, so it has to be constantly making these corrections. That's what the autopilot does. All those corrections are made because of the means in which the airplane is flying through, right? Has nothing to do with curvature. Has nothing, because there's no curvature, right? So as Joshua Silva had, and if you watch Flatten the Curve, which is always a good documentary to go back and watch, he says it specifically, he looked for the manuals where Coriolis effect, that is not even mentioned there, because the corrections are made because of the winds. No, there's no such thing as Coriolis effect, because Earth does not spin, right? It's put in your mouth and repeat it. It's just like that saying, if you repeat something over and over and over, what happens? You know, it becomes something true. So they keep repeating this stuff. Oh, Coriolis effect is because of the curvature, blah, 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 blah. They repeat over and over again. So to brainwashing people, you know, but Earth does not spin, right? So there is this flat Earth pastor from Peru. He's a really good pastor, okay, but all his sermons are in Spanish. So he was telling, like 30 years ago, when he was very young, he bought a ticket to fly to Sydney, from Lima to Sydney, and the ticket says, you know, it's direct flight. But when he was flying, it stopped in Los Angeles, and he could not understand, you know, what was he doing in Los Angeles. And it was only when now that he became a flat earth that he could understand what happened. His story is very similar to mine, and I'm going to show you in a few minutes here. So that's why he had to stop in Los Angeles, because Earth is not a ball. He cannot fly from Lima to Peru. He cannot. He has to stop in Los Angeles because Earth is not a ball. All you have to do is look at the flat Earth map, and you can understand why from Lima he had to make a stop in Los Angeles, because that's the route of the airplane. So when I tell you it's very similar to my story, it's because I also, when I worked for the airline, I could not understand why our flights from Rio or even from Argentina, because at that time, Argentina had their soccer team flying to Sydney as well, and they also went through Los Angeles, you know, and I never understood. You know, it was only when I got hold of the flat Earth map that I could understand what went on. So from Rio, they had to stop in Los Angeles and Sydney because Earth is flat, is not a ball. They could not fly, even though the company had a flight from Rio to Chile, Santiago, Chile. I thought, well, maybe they will stop. That's when I went to the airport, and the soccer team was departing to go to Australia for the tournament, the anniversary of the 200th birthday of the nation of Australia. So I was thinking, oh, okay, they're gonna fly from Rio to Chile, Santiago from Chile to Sydney. That's what I had in mind. And then, like that, no, they're going to, they were in Los Angeles. And I was like, what? I couldn't understand why. And I had this, for 30 years until I saw the flat Earth map. Once I saw the flat Earth map, I said, wow, I know, now I know why they had to stop in LA. Because it's just not possible to fly from straight from, well, it is possible now because they have extended range airplanes, all right, airplanes that can fly uh, longer, be in air longer, okay? And they always had actually, but used to be like special planes like the Air Force One. I think the Air Force One is able to fly for, well, I don't know, like one of the Brazilian mechanics, he works for the presidential. Uh, Let me go back to this map here real quick. He does maintenance for the presidential airplane in Brazil. The Brazilian official, Brazilian Air Force One, whatever. So he does maintenance. And he told, that was on an interview, he said that he himself had worked on that airplane. That airplane is able to remain flying for up to 20 hours because it's equipped with extra fuel tanks, whatever, for that. All right. So he said that that airplane can fly from Rio to Japan nonstop if it's necessary, if that's come to be the case. All right, that's not my words, his words. So I believe Air Force One is also capable of being in the air for several hours, more than the regular airplane. Okay. So the same thing here for these flights coming from Sydney to Santiago. He said that he believes those planes are also not just like any other regular plane, are special planes. They can fly much faster, and also they are helped with the jet streams here, as we just saw the animation. Which is gonna take me to my one of the last things that I want to talk about it. So back in 2019, Alan Joyce from Qantas, he was giving several interviews, and he was in New York with that flight from New York back to Sydney. A nonstop flight was going to be the very first one. So that was part of a project of long range flights. Okay, long range flights. I'm not sure if they are still going along with that, but that was part. And my question is, let me find. Okay, yeah, this one. So my question was, why can't they fly from Sydney straight to Mexico City? So I also had one that's Sydney to Mexico City. So I always wonder why now they couldn't fly straight from Sydney to Mexico City. So back in 2019, Qantas had this project of long haul flights. And okay, so I was going through reading all their projects and the future projects. So they had one, I don't know if they still have it, but they were planning to fly straight from Sydney to Mexico City starting in 2024. It makes you wonder why, so why is this important? Let me show you here. Because supposedly United Airlines already fly from Sydney to Houston over Mexico, okay? And Qantas also has a flight from Sydney to Dallas over Mexico. Supposedly, this is the route on the Earth. So if they are already flying over Mexico, why do they have to wait until 2024 when new aircrafts will be introduced and with a longer capacity, and you know, it's because this is not the real route. And we talked about that, you know, I've talked about this several years ago, because the real route is this one here. No flights coming from Australia really fly south of Hawaii. We have Hawaii right here. They all fly north of Hawaii. They do all because Earth is flat. There's no way. That's why there's no way on the ball for the flights coming from the ball fly over Mexico and land in Houston. This flight comes from the north here, lands in Houston, then you go to Mexico City. So if you are a citizen from Mexico and you live in Australia and you want to fly to Mexico, you got to fly. You have to stop either San Francisco or Los Angeles or Vancouver or Houston, and then you go to Mexico. I mean, right there tells you that there's something wrong, all right? So there are no flights really flying over Mexico City, right? Coming from Australia. Okay, they all come. This is the flight route they do. Of course, they show animations and simulations of a ball flying over that route, but it's not possible, guys. It's just not possible. So they were planning to start this flight from Mexico to straight to from Sydney to Mexico, starting in 2024. Okay, 2024. All right, so let me see what else I have as far as flights. There was something here that I want to show you. This thing here, real quick. I have tried to illustrate several times that flying with the jet streams is like walking on this thing here, on the walk walking belt, whatever they call. You see these a lot in airports. Okay, so you see here, number one, this guy is just standing there. Let's say this is the airplane flying, but when he walks, he goes much faster. So this is the equivalent of an airplane flying with the jet streams, okay? So even though the airplane is still flying 500 miles per hour ground speed, it shows it's being carried. You add another 250 miles per hour. So this is a perfect example. And look at the guy trying to go back, okay? So if we had this atmosphere really flying with the ball, I mean, how can the airplane, fly back and fly from the east coast to the west coast? I mean, it would just hover there, like an air helicopter just hovering, and the destination comes to you, right? So, I mean, I don't know what's going on with all these physics professors, and I don't know if they don't think. No, not sure, guys. So, I hope you guys have enjoyed so far. This is the very first one. Thank you, like RV. I plan to have one of these with him, but let's see, guys. Sometimes I don't feel really well, as I have explained. I have this problem called adrenal insufficiency, which I'm gonna be showing some of this stuff. Perhaps I should show right now. So I thank you guys, my subscribers who have constantly sending me like tips. So I'm taking this stuff here, okay? Just showing, don't want to have YouTube censoring me properly. This is all stuff that people tell me to take, and this stuff here, okay? And also have apple cider. And one thing that's helped me a lot is this salt I mix with water, helps my cortisol level. But I'm always having these ups and downs. So it was really good for me to be able to be here today. I really was like, may the Lord, I don't know, perhaps bless me that we could do it today. Now, next week, I plan to be back. It's not going to be on Tuesday. It's going to be a day before. It's going to be on Monday, same time. And I'm going to bring a guest. When I was at RV, I was explaining to him, how the waves and all the power, even though the tsunami was down here, it never really wraps around Antarctica. It spreads on this region right here, okay? So I'm going to bring a guy here. He knows a lot about waves, and he's the one who made one math professor. I thought he was a physics professor, but he was a math professor. He made him cry. And one thing about that guy, he was going to debate three physics professor. So there is a document from NASA, which I'm going to bring next week. I'm going to show to you guys. So the document, if you read, talks about waves in the oceans, how the oceans, the water in the ocean is flat, and the waves travel flat over the flat ocean, right? And one of the physics professor who was going to debate fake flip wrote about it 12 years ago, a paper, those academic papers that you publish. He had published a paper 12 years ago talking exactly about that. The oceans were flat and the waves travel flat, okay? And I believe this physics professor even forgot about this paper, but Fake Flip knew about the paper. He read the paper, right? So he went to this debate to talk about waves. And at the very beginning, guys, the debate just started like 2 minutes when this professor was talking about, the ball worth, and then, well, why did you write a paper saying the waves are flat over a flat ocean? Immediately, they closed down the stream. They closed down the stream like they was gone. No, less than only 2 minutes, right? And I'm gonna be bringing this guy here. So let me see what else. We have 6 minutes left. I want to keep it in really 75 minutes. I don't want people to be too tired later to be watching the live stream later. Oh, my language is Portuguese. I'm originally from Brazil. My main language is Portuguese, but I have been speaking English for over 30 years. Okay, I lived in the US. I went to college there. I married to a Japanese woman. Sorry guys, I don't have super chat. I don't even know how to do that stuff. I'm trying, YouTube. It's they don't allow me to do any monetization, and I can't find how to do any stuff like that. Let me see, Eddie. Can you show flight QR 920 on the AE map? Uh, I'm not familiar with this. I'm going to be looking at. I'm so sorry, guys. I wasn't keeping up with much of the stream because I was presenting my stuff. Zetetsky YouTube, shout out to you. Hi, Lo. Okay, Tommy Jones, Sunflowers, Salvatore Papadillo. Where's the tsunami info? Well, go back to my channel. See there. A couple weeks ago, I have there the tsunami. Okay, you can watch the whole live stream with RV, 2 hours long, or you just the 15 minutes that I have there. All right, so let me see what else, guys. Fermented garlic honey. Yes, I drink a lot of ginger. Okay, here in Japan, they use ginger when you eat raw fish, and you have to eat with ginger because ginger kills all the bacteria. So I love ginger. I love ginger regardless. Shout out to RV. Yes, thank you, Sunflower. Being speaking it for more than my own language because my two daughters were born in the West, so they are native speakers, and we talk every day. My wife loves her accent. Thank you, Better Than Gold. It's Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese. So I tried to bring some information about flights today. It can be helpful for some of you. Most of you already know a lot about flights. I don't see any. So I'm going to look at that flight QR 920 on the AE map, and perhaps next week I'll talk about it before we talk with the guest. He's going to have 45 minutes, about 50 minutes, but I'm going to try to keep always 75 minutes and once a week. I still have some TikToks videos to make it public. They are all unlisted right now, but I have like 7, so I don't want to overload my channel with too many at the same time. So I'll see if I can release 1 or 2 a week. All right, guys, so it's almost over. I thank you guys for being here. First time, sorry for any problems that I might have had today because I'm not really that familiar with live stream, and I'm actually live streaming from my phone. I'm just using my laptop to share screen. But let me see. They do fly over Mexico. There's a video from a guy in Central Mexico filming flight QF7 overhead. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I have to check that stuff. Okay. Or if there was just one case of one flight flying over that region over there. So I don't know about it. It's very weird flying over Mexico all these years, but not able to actually fly from Sydney to Mexico City, waiting for another airplane with higher capacity. So I don't know. Maybe they just took off from LA and went around, flew over Mexico, just to pretend. We never know. The enemy has many tricks under their leaves if you watch it, sorcery, helio sorcery. All right, guys, last minute. Thank you all very much for being here. I'm gonna play this closing. And it was very nice talking to you guys. Let me see if it works. And you guys have a good day. I'll hope to see you again next week live. But I'll be uploading videos. And if you want to share this live stream with anybody about flights, thank you guys. I'll see you next time.
There was a documentary just put out yesterday,
Yep.
a good one, by the way, people should check out, called Flatten the Curve, by a bunch of pilots and military people. That's our term. That's our flat Earth term.